The automatic doors of St. David's ICU in Austin wheezed open, letting in a blast of hot air like an oven door. The heatwave of 2037 had pushed the city's power grid to rolling blackouts, and the hospital was running on backup generators. The hallways flickered in and out of emergency light, an eerie orange glow against stainless steel walls. Rose Calder, 68, clutched a foil-wrapped loaf of cornbread she'd baked that morning, planning to surprise her son Julian at work. Instead, a nurse guided her to a dim room where Julian lay unconscious, chest rising mechanically, machines beeping in a rhythm too steady to feel human. Rose's throat tightened. The cornbread slipped in her trembling hands. "My boy," she whispered. The nurse explained he had collapsed at the lab from a massive cardiac event alone. No wife at his side. No frantic family calls. Just co-workers panicking in the heat, dialing 911. Rose reached for the chair by his bed. The vinyl was hot, sticky from the broken air conditioning. She sat down, her mind spinning, and then her phone buzzed. Out of habit, she tapped open Sloane's Instagram feed. Her daughter-in-law, instead of being in this sweltering ICU, was wrapped in a towel at Iceland's Blue Lagoon, glass of champagne in hand, grinning beside a tattooed man Rose had never seen. The caption: "Detoxing from toxic energy. New chapter begins here." Rose stared at the glowing screen, then at her son hooked up to life support. In that moment, the cornbread, the heat wave, the blackout all faded. What burned hottest was the certainty in her gut. Sloane wasn't just absent. She was erasing Julian and cashing in while he fought for his life. Rose steadied herself, wiping the sweat from her forehead. The ICU smelled of bleach and overheated wiring, but the fire burning in her chest kept her focused. She pulled out her phone. Years ago, Julian had trusted her enough to make her a co-signer on his emergency trust account, a safety net meant for medical crises, never for this. Her fingers moved with unexpected certainty as she typed the password. Click. On the screen. Accounts frozen. Access revoked. Somewhere in Iceland, a champagne glass was probably slipping from manicured fingers as every card declined at once. Rose allowed herself the smallest, coldest smile. "Welcome to reality, Sloane." She immediately downloaded the transaction history. $12, $400 at the Blue Lagoon Resort, first-class airline tickets, endless wellness treatments. It was all there in black and white. The phone buzzed again. Incoming call, Sloane. Rose tapped speaker. Margaret, something's wrong with the cards, everything's being declined." "Oh, how inconvenient," Rose said sweetly, her voice as sharp as glass. "By the way, where exactly are you calling from?" Before Sloane could spin a story, Rose hung up. She scrolled her contacts and tapped a name she hadn't dialed in years, Tasha Ruiz. Ruiz Investigations. "Tasha, it's Rose Calder. I need you to find someone. Fast. She's in Iceland, burning through my son's money while he's fighting for his life in the ICU." "Rose," Tasha chuckled darkly, "it's been a while, but from the sound of your voice, you're ready for war. Don't worry, I'll dig, and I won't be gentle." Rose set the phone down, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the rush of something fierce and unrelenting, a mother's justice. The machines beeped in a steady rhythm, a metronome for borrowed time. Rose had just finished filing away screenshots of Sloane's spending spree when she heard a groan. "Mom!" Julian's eyes fluttered open, glazed at first, then sharpening as he took in the tubes, the wires, and his mother's face hovering above him. Relief flooded Rose's chest, followed by dread. How do you tell your son the truth without shattering him? "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered, gripping his hand. "You scared me half to death." Julian coughed, the sound rough, but his mind was already racing. "Where's Sloane? She should." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the look in his mother's eyes. "She's not here, is she?" Rose hesitated, then pulled out her phone. With one swipe, she showed him the photo, Sloane in Iceland, clinking glasses with another man. Julian's jaw tightened. He wasn't shocked, more like vindicated. "I knew it." Rose blinked. "You knew." He nodded weakly. "I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago. I didn't want to believe it. But the late nights, the sudden interest in wellness retreats, the unexplained charges, it all added up." He gave a bitter half-smile. "Guess I was waiting for my heart to break before I broke the news." Rose shook her head, fury mixing with sorrow. "Julian, she left you alone in a hospital bed. That's not just betrayal, it's abandonment." Julian's lawyer instincts kicked in, even from the bed. Abandonment. Adultery, financial misconduct. That's enough to tear apart any prenup, isn't it? Rose leaned in, whispering like they were conspiring. "More than enough, and I've already frozen the accounts." For the first time since opening his eyes, Julian laughed, low and pained but real. "You did what?" "I froze every card she could touch. She stuck over there, broke with her boy toy." His laugh turned into a cough, but there was steel in his voice when it subsided. "Then we move now. Call Aisha Bennett, my lawyer. Tell her it's time to put the plan in motion." Rose nodded, gripping his hand tighter. He wasn't just a victim lying in bed. He was a strategist sharpening his next move. And together they were about to make sure Sloane never saw another dime or their children without a fight. 3 days later, the Texas sun was setting low, painting the sky a bruised orange. Rose stood in Julian's living room with her daughter Marin, folding laundry, while Leela and Theo played upstairs. The house was calm for the first time in weeks, until the sound of tires screeched across the driveway. A car door slammed. Then fists pounded against the front door. Rose opened it, calm as a judge. Sloane stood there, disheveled, her designer dress wrinkled from the long flight, hair greasy, fury etched across her face. "Where are my children?" she demanded, pushing past Rose into the house. "They're safe," Rose said evenly, "which is more than I can say for their father when you abandoned him in the ICU. Sloane spun, eyes blazing. "I didn't abandon anyone. I was stranded. No money, no flights, no way home. And you," she jabbed a finger at Rose, "you had no right to freeze those accounts." Actually, a voice interrupted. Aisha Bennett, Julian's lawyer, stepped into the living room, a leather briefcase in hand. "She had every right, and I'm here to make sure you understand the consequences of your actions." Sloane's face fell. "Who the hell are you?" "Julian's attorney," Aisha said coolly. She set a folder on the coffee table and flipped it open, revealing stamped documents. "As of this afternoon, a temporary court order grants Julian full custody of the children. You will have supervised visitation only, pending further review." Sloane laughed bitterly. "You can't keep a mother from her kids. You kept yourself from them," Aisha replied, her tone sharp as steel. "You chose Iceland over your husband's hospital bed. You chose an affair over your family. And now," she slid another paper across the table, "the locks on this home have been legally changed. You no longer live here." From the staircase, a small voice cut through the tension. "Mommy." Leela stood halfway down the steps, clutching the banister, her eyes wide. Theo peeked from behind her. Sloane's tone shifted instantly, syrupy sweet. "Baby, Mommy's home." But Leela didn't run into her arms, she just frowned. "Why were you yelling at Grandma?" Rose's heart clenched. Before she could step in, Leela spoke again, her voice steady for a 9-year-old. "Daddy was sick. Why weren't you here?" Silence fell heavy as stone. For once, Sloane had no clever excuse, no glamorous caption, no hashtag to hide behind. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And in that silence, the children understood more than any lawyer, judge, or bank statement could ever teach them, who had stayed and who had left. 2 nights later, Rose sat alone in the hospital's visitor lounge, sipping stale coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. She almost ignored the call when an unknown number lit up her screen. but instinct made her answer. "Mrs. Calder." The voice was clinical, a doctor's. "This is Riverside Memorial. Your daughter-in-law Sloane has been admitted following what appears to be a suicide attempt. She's asking for you specifically." Rose froze. Sloane, the woman who had torn her family apart. Why would she ask for her? An hour later, Rose entered a small psychiatric ward room. The woman lying in the bed was barely recognizable. Mascara streaked, hair tangled, the mask of glamour stripped away. "Margaret," Sloane whispered, her voice cracked and raw. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you," Rose said bluntly. "I came for answers. What game are you playing now?" Sloane shook her head weakly. "It's not a game. It's Dante." Her eyes darted to the door as if expecting him to appear. "He's not who I thought he was." Rose folded her arms. "Tell me something I don't already know." Sloane's lips trembled. "When you froze the accounts, he changed. He said there were other ways to get the money. He knows about Julian's assets. He knows about you." Rose's stomach turned cold. "What do you mean, other ways?" Tears slipped down Sloane's face. "Accidents." He called them accidents. He talked about the summer blackouts, the overloaded circuits. He said an electrical fire could take you out and look natural. Then, after a few months, Julian, a staged car crash maybe. That way I'd inherit everything and he'd disappear with the money. Rose's knuckles went white on the chair arms. "You let him plan this." "I didn't know how deep it went," Sloane cried. "But when I tried to back out, he turned on me. He said he didn't need me alive to collect. That's when I knew he's been using me all along." Rose's voice dropped to a whisper, deadly calm. "Prove it." Sloane reached under her pillow and slid a phone across the blanket. "I recorded him, every conversation, every plan, hours of it." Rose pressed play. Dante's voice filled the room, smooth and chilling. "The old lady goes first. One power surge on that smart meter and it looks like the grid fried her system. After that, the son. Car accident. Clean. The kids, they'll trust Sloane. That's the point." Rose's hands shook as she stopped the recording. The room tilted. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was murder dressed up as tragedy. Sloane whispered, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I don't want him to kill you, or Julian, or the kids. Help me stop him." Rose stared at the woman who had betrayed her son, who had nearly destroyed her family, and now was begging for salvation. For the first time, Rose realized the truth. The affair was only the surface. The real enemy was a man who had turned smart homes and insurance policies into weapons. The Texas night was suffocating. Power grid rolling blackouts had cut the street into patches of darkness, the only light coming from the soft glow of neighbors' backup generators. Rose sat in her living room, the curtains drawn, pretending to read a book. But her phone buzzed quietly on the table. FBI Special Agent Keegan Park signal. "He's close." Through the slit in the blinds, Rose spotted him. Dante Voss. Baseball cap low, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, moving like a man who knew exactly where the breakers and smart meters were hidden. Her pulse pounded, but Rose didn't move. She was bait, and she knew it. Dante knelt beside the smart meter panel, pulling out a device that looked like a sleek power tool. He snapped it onto the wires with chilling precision. "One surge," he muttered to himself, and Grandma becomes a headline. A click, a sudden flood of blue and red lights. "FBI, hands where we can see them." From the shadows, agents swarmed, weapons drawn. Dante spun, eyes wide, reaching for the duffel. But Rose stepped onto the porch, her silhouette framed in the heat haze. Her voice was steady, cold as iron. "Looking for me?" Dante froze just long enough for two agents to pin him to the ground. The duffel spilled open. Forged ID, fraudulent insurance papers, burner phones. His entire empire of deceit dumped onto the concrete. Special Agent Park snapped cuffs around Dante's wrists. "Dante Voss, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and identity theft across state lines." Dante tried to smirk, but the fight was gone. "You'll regret this," he spat. Rose's reply cut sharper than steel. "No, Dante, the only one regretting anything here is you." As they hauled him into the SUV, Rose felt her knees weaken, not from fear, but from release. For the first time in months, her family was safe. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and cold air conditioning, a rare relief after weeks of blistering Texas heat. Rose sat beside Julian, his arms still in a brace, but his posture stronger, steadier. Across the aisle, Sloane sat pale and hollow, her once perfect image reduced to silence under the weight of evidence stacked against her. Judge Wallace's voice echoed through the chamber. "Custody of the children, Leila and Theo Calder, is hereby granted to their father, Julian Calder, with temporary guardianship support from his mother, Rose Calder. Supervised visitation for Mrs. Sloane Calder is permitted at the court's discretion." The gavel struck once. Final. Julian exhaled, a long breath he'd been holding for months. He looked at his mother and whispered, "We did it." Rose didn't answer with words. She just reached for his hand, squeezing it like she had in the ICU, back when the outcome had been uncertain. That evening in Julian's backyard, the children played tag in the grass while Rose poured lemonade into chipped mason jars. The sky was softer now, streaked with pink instead of the angry orange of the heat wave. Theo ran up, breathless. "Grandma, Daddy's faster than me again." Rose laughed, a sound she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Julian stood by the porch railing, watching his kids with eyes full of something stronger than anger, stronger than betrayal, hope. Sloane's shadow still lingered, her court-ordered visits a reminder of choices she couldn't undo. But here, in this yard, the truth was undeniable. The Calder family had survived. Rose lifted her glass toward Julian. "To rebuilding," she said softly. Julian clinked his against hers. "To never letting anyone break us again." Weeks later, the house was finally quiet. The garden lights buzzed gently in the evening breeze as Rose sat on the back porch, knitting while Leila and Theo dozed upstairs after a day full of laughter. Julian leaned against the door frame, still recovering but stronger each day. He broke the silence. "Mom, do you ever wonder how close we came to losing it all?" Rose set down her yarn, looking at her son with a tired smile. "I don't wonder, Julian, I know, and that's why we'll never take peace for granted again." He nodded, then whispered, almost ashamed, "I should have protected you from Sloane." Rose shook her head firmly. "No, son, don't you ever apologize for loving. Betrayal isn't your shame, it's hers. What matters is you opened your eyes in time to protect your children. That's legacy. That's strength." Julian looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting for the first time in what felt like years. "Maybe the lawyer in me wanted to fight, but the son in me just needed his mother." Rose reached for his hand, just as she had in the ICU. "And you'll always have her." She turned her gaze upward, where the Texas night sky shimmered faintly against the fading city lights. Her voice dropped to a whisper, meant for herself as much as for anyone listening. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying the enemy. It's protecting the ones you love and making sure evil never wins." The camera lingers on Rose's face, lined with years, lit by quiet strength. Then it pans to the upstairs window, where Leila's small hand presses against the glass, safe, watching her grandmother.